At your very first panel, the most people that we had. So you're a big draw for this event. So thank you for coming 3 times in a row. This year we're going to have about 10,000 people. Wow. We had a couple thousand that first time. So thank you for coming now. I just want to say that I used to be a speechwriter for the great Joe Biden. Is anybody here a fan of Joe Biden? I heard a couple of boos in security. It's a high-pressure job because he's a brilliant guy, and I had my boss would call me and say, tomorrow I need a speech on the history of education. How am I going to do that? And then later in the day she'd call and say, I need a speech on the history of healthcare for tomorrow. How am I going to get all this done? But my boss was so nice and so smart, I could not say no. This is my boss, Evan Ryan, and she's your moderator for the panel today. So Evan was Assistant Secretary of State for Education and Cultural Affairs for President Obama. And now she's the Executive VP of Axios Media. Axios.com? Axios.com. And I'm going to turn this over to Evan. Evan, do you need this?
No. Barely. No. Do we have to do something? Does that work?
Chuck. Sure, I'll moderate.
1, 2. Can you hear me?
Then no one will get to talk.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. Why don't we introduce our panelists who are here with us? First, we have 11-time, 12, including her most recent book. 12-time New York Times best-selling author, pundit, legal correspondent for Human Events and viral sensation, Ann Coulter. Is stand-up comic, performer, author, podcaster, author, by the way, of the smartest book in the world, and his podcast, The Smartest Man in the World. He will be podcasting tomorrow live from POLITICON, Greg Proops. We also have with us the political editor of townhall.com, Fox News contributor, and author of End of Discussion, which will actually, Guy Benson, Guy right here. And we should note that Guy will be having a book signing tomorrow of the End of Discussion.
Today. After this.
Today, after the panel. So will Anne. And so will Anne be having a book signing today after the panel.
I wonder if she'll outsell me.
And then I'd like to introduce our fourth panelist, tech culture journalist and co-editor and partner at the blog Boing Boing, Xeni Jardin. So we've had a bit of a precursor of an introduction to our panel. So as we all know and we've just seen, we're gathering at a time when there's been a big uptick in free speech incidents on campuses coast to coast, from Berkeley to Wisconsin to Middlebury. In the year 2000, there were 6 incidents of revoked invitations or attempts to block speakers. In 2016, there were 43 such incidents of revoked invitations or attempts to block speakers. Wow. So the free speech movement, as we know, emerged in the 60s, protests of the Vietnam War, support of civil rights, but most recent incidents seem primarily aimed at silencing or denying platforms to conservative speakers. So the debate that we have before us is between free speech purists and those who think that PC has run amok, versus those who are profoundly offended by the expression of extreme views or who believe that the intent of the speaker is to provoke rather to inform. So as we discuss with our panelists today, and we're talking about campuses, we should also consider university administrators and the challenges that confront them with this issue. I'd like to start with Ann Coulter, whose scheduled speech at Berkeley was canceled. And so Ann, could you speak a little bit about what happened at Berkeley?
Well, it was nice to see liberals in their native garb here, and that's basically what happened at Berkeley. They are brown shirts.
should approach it. So I'm going to go back to Anne and hear from her about her experience at Berkeley. So Anne, I believe you were scheduled to be at Berkeley and to speak on campus in April of this year. Is that right?
Yes, it was basically the same Nazi tactics, but it was coming from the administrators. And I will say, to explain what's going on, I won't take a lot of time, but I mean, there are two big things. Who are the administrators of college campuses today? They are the radicals from the 60s. They don't want free speech. They want to win. It is a fascistic view, and unfortunately, they're really harming their students. I used to say there was much like this for years. I give lots of college speeches. I have for more than a decade. And much of this would go on usually at the lesser universities, not at Harvard or Yale. They want to argue with you. And I used to say, just for meeting the college Republicans, often the high school Republicans, they wake up every day of their college careers, they are arguing. These kids are so clever, they're so smart, you could put a college kid on Hannity and Combs right now, and that was conservative liberal, for those of you who are younger who don't know. And he would kick Alan Combs' ass, because that's all conservatives do, and it develops an intellectual skill that I think is important to know. I mean, whether you're going to be a pundit on TV or a lawyer or you're a pharmaceutical executive, you need to know both sides of the argument to formulate your own argument. About that time, they put a high school Republican on Hannity and Combs, and he kicked Alan Combs' ass. Meanwhile, all you get from the left is this bold, self-righteous look at me and, oh, my feelings are hurt, which is just, a different form of Nazi bullying, as this is. Oh, my feelings, you can't say this. I need the safe space. No, formulate an argument. And as we've also just seen, part of the reason I think this is changing is, it all comes back to immigration. It's a long part of the Anglo-Saxon tradition to think that debate leads to the truth rising to the top. It goes back to Martin Luther's theses, the Magna Carta, our Declaration of Independence, a statement for the world explaining our revolution. I mean, fast forward to all of these conservative books coming out. When I wanted to impeach Bill Clinton, I didn't stand outside the White House with a sign yelling fascist. I wrote a book. I made the arguments. I cited the law. We are bringing in long 300, 400, 700-year history, as I say, going back to Magna Carta and Martin Luther. And, look to the South for the sort of dialogue and politics we're getting here. I mean, right now you can look it up. There's a protest someplace in Latin America. Just storm the streets, wave the signs. You see it in a lot of other countries. You don't see it in our country, which is why assimilation is so important. We can take in anybody, but you gotta learn the Anglo-Saxon tradition of arguing points out, of deliberating, of changing laws, of voting in a democracy, and not just running out onto the street and smashing Starbucks windows.
So Greg, to Anne's point, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, doesn't it benefit you to hear either a view that you support or a view you oppose, and doesn't it help you refine your argument if you're on a college campus today and if you're a student?
I think being informed is the most important thing one can do. To be educated on all points of view. Whether there's an Anglo-Saxon tradition that presupposes all other traditions, I think is a strenuously xenophobic. And the idea that the only protesters that are in the streets breaking things up are liberal protesters is also fallacious. I think that there's an enormous number of liberal commentators, pundits, and minds who are calm and measured, judicious, and erudite in what they have to say. The argument about whether you should limit free speech is one matter. The political correctness thing is another matter. I don't think political correctness has run amok. I think that people who assert that wish to avail themselves hate speech and misogyny, homophobia, and racism, and that they do it under the cover. Of having their rights trampled by political correctness. Does that address the point that you were asking me there?
I think it does address part of it, but I might go to Guy now and ask him, why do you think we've seen the uptick in these incidents, in the people revoking invitations or students asking that people not come to campuses? Why is this on the rise?
Well, it's because it works. The administrators sit there and let the children be children and refuse to be the adults and say, no, we're going to allow people to speak on campus. And I thought it was interesting, these protesters, we had two groups of them, two of whom were white, I would point out, but these two over here were saying Trump and Pence must go with their big banner. We're going to have an election in 3.5 years. That's how we do things in this country. And I mean, I don't understand. It seems like it seems like outbursts like that are doing a lot of favors, I think, to Donald Trump and Mike Pence to get reelected. You know, it's very frustrating. I actually was thinking about this panel before we started, and I was thinking about my freshman year in college. It was 2003 at Northwestern, and we had a controversial speaker coming to campus. People had papered the campus sidewalks with some of this person's controversial or objectionable quotes, and of course that grew the audience to overflow crowd, and that person was Coulter. And she came out to a standing room only audience. She opened by saying, liberals are only wrong about two things, foreign policy and domestic policy. And that got a laugh and some boos and some groans, and we were off to the races. She made a Ted Kennedy killed a woman joke, fact check true, and we asked questions of her for an hour. She stood for an hour and took our questions, and some people were very upset with what she had to say. The faculty wrote a letter to the Daily Northwestern, 7 or 8 of them, calling it a hate rally. She signed a copy of the newspaper with hate and Coulter. And then everyone went home. Everyone went home and discussed what we had just seen. And I don't know if anyone's minds were changed, I don't know. But what didn't happen was no one stood up and tried to shut down what was going on. No one tried to get her disinvited from campus. That wasn't that long ago. And I hope we can get back to a paradigm where we have a little bit of tolerance to hear things that might genuinely be offensive to us. You have no right not to hear inoffensive things. You have a right not to show up if you don't want to. Amen. You don't have a right to show up and disrupt events and block other people. Amen.
There has been this rise, and students are acting and trying to stop speakers from coming to campus. Do you, as with your tech and digital background, do you think social media is playing a role in this, or do you see another cause for this uptick?
I should qualify first by saying that I'm a college dropout, and I'm further to the left than most people who call themselves liberals, but I hate these labels. Look, I believe that free speech doesn't mean that we're not responsible for the consequences what we say. And I think a fundamental American value is that free speech matters, and that the solution for what you might think of as bad speech or offensive speech is more speech. The problem that I have isn't with people banning Coulter or whoever on college, but look, on the internet, like, I never thought that I would be at a place where I would be praying that the president would engage less on social media. I think whether you're a Trump fan or not, everybody's a little freaked out by the hair trigger. But, you know, journalists, I can think of a number of, look, my colleagues at Boing Boing, who had Jewish-sounding last names, were harassed by neo-Nazis who followed them around on Twitter, posted their addresses, threatened their families. You know, we who work in journalism and who make a living, just like Anne, just like other polarizing speakers, we have a right to speak without being physically threatened, right? So this idea that it's just about right-wingers and bleeding heart liberals who are clutching their pearls over offensive words, I think this is BS. This is BS. Like, there are people like me who are ready to fight, who are ready to argue, who are ready to have engaged and civil conversations. This doesn't have to be something where we're just hiding behind walls all the time.
And this year at Texas Southern University, Senator Cornyn was scheduled to be the commencement speaker, and the students objected, and his invitation was withdrawn. And one of the arguments the students gave was that this was their commencement, they should enjoy it, they should have someone at graduation whom they wanted to hear from. Would you agree with that?
If they had said he's too boring a speaker, I would have agreed. But I don't know, that they take a vote? He's a senator from one of the most populous states in the state where this college happens to be. My alma mater, Cornell, avoids all this hoo-ha over the commencement speeches by having the president give the speech every year, and maybe that's a good idea, and just bring in people who have something to say and are interesting to educate the students. That's it. Some of the other things that were said, but
well, I do have a question for the whole panel, and that is there a difference between free speech and someone coming on campus to talk about a genuinely controversial idea versus, is there a fine line between that and provocation on campuses? Or do you view them as one and the same and all covered by free speech?
Could I say anyone who wants to be heard wants to be provocative? Winston Churchill was being provocative when he said, "We will fight on the beaches," and gives these magnificent speeches. Of course you are trying to provoke people to read you otherwise, or to listen to you. And the idea that there is a difference between hate speech and speech is preposterous.
Okay, so Milo Yiannopoulos, he was okay, so here's the question. At the University of Wisconsin, during a speech, he put the photo and the name of a transgender student on the screen behind him. Is that unnecessarily and irresponsibly treating a student in a really unkind manner, or is that a part of free speech that should be happening on campuses today?
What we're talking about is, in part, people who monetize hate. I gotta say here, all you guys trashing Ann Coulter, I respect her for her ability to build a very successful career out of hate. Who's drowning out free speech now?
A lot of talk about safe spaces and snowflakes and all that, but I find that from the top down, Orange 45, the Kremlin-controlled carrot, is the most sensitive snowflake in the entire world. He can accept no criticism. He's mad at Mitch McConnell. He's mad at Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. He's mad at the world. He's mad at Twitter because no one's listening to him and doing what he wants all the time. And that doesn't seem to be a leadership role in my estimation. It seems to be someone who wants their feelings protected, who should be above this kind of fray and not engaging in childish name-calling. You may remember the last president, before everything went to shit, was a calm, judicious, legal-minded speaker. The idea that he would say something like sad or bad or beleaguered attorney general or anything like that was beyond the pale. And now the discourse is so, and I just said shit, but the discourse is so vulgar and childish.